Hello, Dan.
Good, good.
The gang's all here. It being 5:30, with a full quorum on the select board, we'll begin the March 10th, 2025 meeting of the Shelburne Select Board. The first item of business is to look at the minutes for February 24th regular meeting and the executive session on February 27th. I have read both, including your updates, Tricia, to the 24th, and I am good with them. Andrew, any comments, thoughts? And Tricia, any other changes on either?
No,
Then we can probably do them as one vote, or do we need separate?
one vote's
One
fine.
vote, fine. We need a motion to approve both sets of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the minutes as adjusted with some minor edits for February 24th regular meeting and the February 27th executive session. We'll call the vote and begin with Tricia
Aye.
and Andrew,
Aye.
and I am I. Motion passes 3-0-0. Okay, liaison reports. I will remind folks that we, a couple of weeks ago, began a temporary uh, time-saving measure to write out our liaison reports, send them around to each of the select board members to see if we have any questions on them or want to expand on any of them. We have week after week budget meeting appointments and so on, and our meetings are getting up to 3 hours at this time of the year. So we chose to do that for a limited amount of time while we get through this process. Anyone who would like to review the liaison reports that are in print are welcome to get them. They are on the town website. So
Just
we
one quick correction, Rick. They're actually incorporated into the meeting minutes each week.
Oh, so that's correct. Sorry about that. Yes. So the meeting minutes are on the website, and within that are the liaison reports. Thank you for that correction.
You're welcome.
And Tricia, let's begin with yours. I have reviewed them. They were, again, very comprehensive, and I didn't have any specific questions for you on any of the matters you touched on. Andrew, have you reviewed? Do you have any comments on Tricia's?
No, no comments. I'll review them when I review the minutes.
Okay. Rick, I just had one addition. I had mentioned in my update that I was waiting to hear back from the senior center about some questions we had regarding their budgeting items. So the next Board of Managers meeting is on Wednesday of this week. They have, in the meantime, updated the cost for insurance based on what Shelburne had found out, what Angel had found out, because that was one thing that was off from before. And they're still waiting to hear from the software company about the rates for their initial installment and ongoing costs, because that was another thing that we were curious about, that $40,000 fee. And then they will be finalizing the decision on the accountant. So that's the only other update I have.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Andrew, you generally have a oratory liaison report. Fire away. You're up.
Well, Rick and I met this past week. I mean, Jeff and I met this past week. And we reviewed the temporary bridge situation, the Maple Street culvert, the overtime issue, the budget, salaries, the one-ton truck, and snow cleanup on the bridge. I mean, on the village, and a number of other items. And if you want more details on them, I will be happy to expand. But in the interest of time, we can move on to other things if you'd like.
Okay. One quick question I know we had followed up once before was The poles need to be moved for the Dragon Brook Bridge that went out on Bardwell's Ferry Road. And then Tricia had concerns about where they're located. And I think we have had confirmation that the gentleman who happened to be on during that meeting did get back and take another look at them, but we haven't heard anything further on it. But there's no big rush since that bridge won't be fixed. In the
Was one of the items that Jeff and I discussed. Do you want some detail on that?
Sure. Have you got feedback?
Okay. Yeah. The Eversource guy has not done any further sort of engineering investigation of it. Jeff's own personal opinion on that is that neither the current location nor the proposed location pose a flood hazard risk. So that's where he stands on it.
So the guy from Eversource hasn't actually been out there, or he has?
He may have been, but he has not produced any engineering assessment of the pole location issue.
Got it. Thank you.
And what brought that up at that meeting was they had given us a bill to move those poles, and we didn't know if that was going to be adjusted if they do in fact choose to move them. So we'll continue to wait and hear from them when they get to it, I guess.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, I guess Jeff is not feeling urgent about it. He feels like there's not a flood problem there.
Terrific. Okay, I have submitted my liaison reports as well. Touched on the Mohawk Trail District Personnel Negotiations Subcommittee, the Police Department, Transit Authority, Police Services Advisory, etc. And does anyone have any questions on those printed liaison reports?
I didn't. Thanks, Rick.
And so hearing none, we've got a little bit of time before we get to our first appointment. I would like to take the liberty of expanding my reporting tonight with first a big thank you to Jeff Bettner. The streetlight changeover has happened, as you know. There's been photos on social media of them at night. Everybody seems very happy with them. The projection was for 4-day install, and they got it done in like 2.5 days. And the reason for that is Jeff Bettner, chairman of the Energy Committee, worked side by side with the installer who came out to put them in, so that he was right there, hands-on, saying this one gets a shield on this side, this one doesn't get a shield, and so on. So I just wanted to give hats off to him for his volunteerism. Secondly, I'd like to request a brief moment of silence in memory of Jim Richardson, who passed away this week. He has served the town on the Board of Assessors for 42 years, I believe it is, 26 years as our tree warden, long-time Shelburne resident and a long-time Shelburne family. And I'd like to take just a few seconds of pause in his memory, if that's okay.
That's fine. Thank you for thinking of that, Rick.
Okay, and while we still have a few more minutes, I'd like to continue and just remind folks that nomination papers are available. We did get it into the Two-Town News addendum. We did get it into the recorder. I say we, I mean the town clerk. Papers for elected positions are available through April 1st. Must be returned by the 15th. So people who might want to think about giving back to community should be aware of those dates. The election is May 20th this year. And the openings this year are Select Board 1 seat, Assessor 1 seat, Town Clerk, Town Moderator, 2 seats on the Planning Board, 2 seats on the Shelburne Free Library Trustee Board, 2 2 seats on the Recreation Committee are open this year for election. Tree warden and constable position, plus a 3-year term on the school committee is open. So there's a lot of elected slots open, and we hope people come out where they have an interest and take out some papers and get in the running for that. And lastly, I'll give us a quick pitch, which we've done before, but I think deserves a quick repeat, is we have vacancies on our appointed boards and committees all the time. And people who do watch this later and have an interest in specific areas of potentially serving the town, these can happen by appointment with just a letter of interest. I suggest that you visit whatever committee or board you might have some interest in, see what they do. If you're interested, make yourself known and ask to become a part of it. We have vacancies currently, right this minute. Board of Health, Community Preservation Committee, a member at large slot, Council on Aging, Cultural Council, Energy Committee, Hill Cemetery Commission, Open Space Committee, Sewer Commissioner, and Zoning Board of Appeals, an alternate member. So there's a lot of slots to be filled, and it's difficult. People have busy lives nowadays, and it's difficult to get people to commit, but there's certainly people who may have an interest that can step forward and help us out with filling some of these positions. Okay, thank you for your allowing me that time. Our first appointment this evening is 545, Tom Williams, Emergency Management Budget. He is on. I think last week we had, we started a little early on one, and one of the people participating hadn't got on yet. You don't have anyone else that's going to join you, right, Tom?
That's correct.
So let's go ahead and begin that presentation. We do have the Finance Committee with us. I see Terry Mitchell and Jim Burnham, and I appreciate you guys, and we'll get going. The floor is yours, sir.
Well, let's start off with the capital expense request. Certainly want to get started on the whole process about getting another emergency generator installed. I learned quite a bit on this last episode with the one at the police station / municipal building. The first thing you need is an engineered plans and drawings, and I got an estimate on that between 4,000 and 6,000. So I chose in between $5,000. So requesting that so we can move forward and get it done properly this time. And then for the operating expenses, not much change there.
Let's hold back.
I'm sorry, Tom, say it again. An engineering plan for what?
An emergency generator.
Oh, okay.
He didn't mention, but for Cowell, right?
Well, that is still up in the air. That hasn't been decided on yet. Wherever we decide we're going to go with the next emergency generator, we definitely need to start with the plans and drawings so that people have something to use to bid against.
How can plans and drawings be done if you don't know where it's going?
Well, that's a decision to be made afterwards, but first of all, we need the money before we go after the request.
And I think also, Tom, you're meeting with the rec committee later this week, right? To find out if you can even use the Cowell as the primary sheltering location.
Well, I got a call from Norman about an hour ago. That's been postponed to next Wednesday.
Okay.
I'm a little confused by this request because
Okay.
there are two different kinds of things you might want funding for. One is to determine the feasibility and desirability of locating a generator at any given location. And that would require certain kinds of exploration and decision making. And the second would be to do the engineering work, as Rick is saying, at the site that is selected. Are you asking for money to do both of those things, or just one of those, or what are you trying to do here?
I'm just trying to get money put aside so that in the upcoming year we can move forward with requesting that an engineer come on site and do whatever he or she has to do in order to come up with a set of documents that can be put out for a bidding process.
But you don't know what site you're talking about yet.
That's correct. But this amount of money should be able to apply for any set of drawings, whether it be here on Main Street, whether it be Bridge Street or wherever. But it's just a set of money set aside so that I can move forward with that request. It,
So,
it,
and
the plans don't have to be specific. I mean, the money that I'm requested doesn't have to be specific to a site. It's just specific to the process.
I guess what I'm hearing you say, Tom, is this is kind of a timing issue right now that you need to have the money available so that you can get the drawings so that when the decision is made about which site you want to use the generator for, you can just go ahead and pursue the drawings for the generator at that time because you've already had them allocated in your budget. Is that right?
That's perfect. That's absolutely the correct. Yes. If if there's no money set aside, then there's no way to pursue getting the engineer on site to start looking the process wherever it might be.
It seems a bit cart before the horse to me, but um, because we don't even know if we can buy a generator or how we would pay for it. Um, and so we don't have the money to do a generator. Why would we spend money for plans of where we could put one, even in the absence of deciding where? And I know there's discussion, and your primary interest was, I thought initially for the Cowl for the potential of it being a warming center. And yeah, if the power were out for a week at the Cowl, there'd be some quick steps to be taken for avoiding freezing pipes and so on in the winter months. My understanding is that the town hall is already wired for a generator, and to me, that's a year-round potential important spot to continue the town's business day in and day out. And I would think that the town hall should be addressed before um, any other use, just my personal opinion. But clarify this, the last generator we did at the police station did not have engineering. I understand it was a bone of contention with one potential bidder. But we had a design quote from several installers. Those were used by the COG to put together the bid structure. The bids went through, everything happened, and my understanding is we currently have, I believe it's Current Electric, looking at the town hall to give us an estimate and a quote for putting a generator in that location. But again, at the same time, that helps a quote from a company like Current Energy to say, okay, it's feasible. It doesn't look like it'd be that much money. Should we look at trying to find a way to fund a generator? So there's a lot of balls in motion here that that I just wanted to get clarified.
Okay. First of all, there's a few there's a few mistakes there in what you just made.
Fire away.
Okay. The yes, there were some people that offered up some design work, but in order to go forward with the process of getting a generator to put out, the process of getting out to bid, we had to have a qualified electrical engineer to come up with plans and drawings. At a last minute kind of thing, I forget her name, but the woman who does all this bidding for the county at FERCog uh, got me in touch with an engineer out of the eastern part of the state called Owl Engineering. And she did this for us, all this for us at a rush because we kind of did things backwards, kind of whatever you want to call it backwards. And I learned a lot about the process and in all the mistakes that were made. And she did this with only a charge of $3,000, which was very, very gracious on her part. It would have cost a lot more, but you have to have engineered drawings for to present to the contractor so that they can bid in this government process. Yes, there were folks that offered up a quote and did some design work, but they were not qualified engineered drawings. So we have to go before, um, again, a qualified engineer to get the proper paperwork, proper documents before we can go out to bid for the generator. Now, this whole process takes a while, so we need to do it step by step by step. The first step we need is the money to go out to the engineer and ask them to come over and to wherever, whether it be the cowl, whether it be wherever it might be. But this first, we got to go step by step in a methodical process here in order to get this thing done, accomplished in an orderly fashion. Last time we got it done, again, it was a whole learning process for me. It was not done in an orderly fashion. There was a lot of teeth gnashing, headaches, phone calls, and oops, I'm sorry this is late, and all this kind of stuff. I don't want to go through that again. So I'm trying to be methodical and looking out in advance. Year one, let's go before the town and ask for the money for the go out and get the proper documentation. And then year two, if not some later on time in year one, but year two, then we start thinking about putting the money aside for the generator. So step by step by step, methodical, to the point, and done in an orderly fashion.
So would you be bringing that proposal if this capital request goes to town meeting? At that time, would you be saying where you would be locating the generator?
Possibly. I
I,
have
I
I
just
have
think it would,
thoughts on that, yes. But there's a decision-making process that has to go through. I think I'd rather not jump ahead with all that until we have secured the drawings.
Or
Well,
secured the location, you mean? Because you have to have the location identified in order to get the drawings made. And then once you have the drawings made, then you can pursue the bids for the generator.
I
Is that
am
right?
I understand that, but of course you got to have it. But let's start off. Can we get the money? There's no sense in making jumping ahead of ourselves and identifying a place until we get assured the financing. If the financing is assured, then we'll go through a process of selecting where we want it done,
well,
which we could probably do before. No, we can't do it before the town meeting. We got to have the money, the funding for the engineered drawings.
Tom, how many locations are really under consideration here?
Two that I know of.
Which are?
Uh, I'm leaning toward the Cowl Gym, and I'm looking to make the Cowl Gym the premier shelter for the town. The town hall has, yes, it has. The town hall has been halfway wired through for an emergency generator already. It has a transfer switch, automatic transfer switch inside, which I've seen. Outside, it has the plug-in for a portable generator to be hooked up. There's an access road that you can easily back in the portable generator that is currently at the fire station. and hook that up and get that going for any need for the fire for the town hall. The bigger need I see is for the residents, for rather than just four individuals working at the town hall, the residents would need a place for a warming center, cooling center, or an overnight center. If we want to look at some of the issues that are going on currently in our area, a couple weeks ago, they opened up a overnight shelter in Heath because of the power outages, and which could not be turned back on for about 24 to 36 hours. Um, Out in Barrington, a year or two ago, there was a wildfire that lasted for a couple of days. So these are issues that are being brought up a lot due to climate change, where we need to come up with I believe, a shelter for an overnight or warming slash cooling center. My preference, to be honest, right up front, which I didn't want to get into tonight, but the cow is the ideal place, and the rec committee right now seems to be leaning toward a favorable vote on that.
Tricia, real brief, we've got 4 minutes to our first meeting and we got to get to the Capitol. So what?
Yeah, so I just had a quick question. In the way you described the ability to hook up a generator to town hall, it sounds like it's possible to have this one generator work at one building or the other, depending on the needs. Is that correct? Like the Cowell Gym, like it could be used at the Cowell Gym if it's needed there, or it could be used at town hall if it's needed there. We could transport this generator, or would it be like a Generac that is permanently affixed?
What I'm proposing for the cow would be a permanent installation, so that would be an
Okay.
automatic transfer. So as soon as the power went out, the electricity would kick in.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Give us an overview on your operating management budget.
Just not too much difference there. One right down the line, though, you got the office supplies. There's a training. I'm looking to increase training. Not so much in the budget, but training opportunities. Generator maintenance for the generator, we got to do annual maintenance on that. Now that I have a Zoom license, there's an annual fee for that. And literature printing. I've made contact with the Franklin County Jail printing office because FEMA is kind of out of the literature business. They send out PDFs for you to do your own printing. So rather than just do a printing off a computer printer, I'm looking for something more professional. Sometime this week, I'll be back in touch and hopefully visiting the printing shop at the Franklin County Jail. So I have $500 added to that. We're looking to get out and do more community relations, pass out more literature.
Good. Well, you're only like a short 500 over last year's number. Finance Committee, would you folks like to weigh in on either of these two items?
You're muted.
Yep.
Yeah.
I just had one question. Has anybody thought about you bouncing around Cowell Gym for this emergency shelter?
There you go.
I'm sorry, what was that again?
She was wondering if there's been some thought about having you bounce around Cowell Gym as an emergency shelter, or using it as an emergency shelter. Is that the concern? We can't hear you.
Muted, Terry. Jim's on and he's muted, and the Finance Committee is also muted. So
Can you
there
hear
you go.
me now?
There you are.
There's bad feedback.
Okay. Has anybody considered Fellowship Hall across the road here from the fire station for this emergency shelter? It's got plenty of parking, which Cowell Gym does not have. It's got a kitchen. It has bathrooms. Well, Cowell Gym does as well, but it seems to me that could be a good alternative to Cowell Gym as well.
It's on the list.
Okay.
Was there a reason, like around that you wanted to pick Cowell over Fellowship Hall, Tom?
Well, if the need was great, number one, Cowell is within the village, a lot easier to get to, and then the Grange Hall would be for Shelburne Center if the need was for that. But it's more for the location and the ease of getting there.
I have a question about that. Can you spend town money on Fellowship Hall if it's not a town-owned building? Terry?
Oh, I have no idea. I just threw out an alternative location. That was all. That was all. I just asked if anybody had considered it. That's all.
We had a written memorandum of understanding with Fellowship Hall when it was our emergency operations center. So it could be used.
We could invest in it though?
I don't think so.
Jim
I
says
think
something.
we split costs when phones were installed. I'm not sure if there's a generator hookup there or not, but we did invest. I think we shared in the cost in order to make it an emergency operations center in its day.
Jim?
Yes. Number one, I don't believe I've heard any statement of need for this generator. We're talking about buying a generator. You know, finally, about 2/3 of the way through the discussion, we find out that maybe it's going to Cowell Gym and maybe it's for a warming shelter. Rick, you mentioned so that the town employees could keep working at town hall. Well, that's an entirely different type of situation. What are we trying to buy here? You know, that's what my first question. And then number two, we're focusing on buildings right away without looking around. Have we considered other buildings? You know, have we considered the town of Buckland? If we're going to put something in the village, we should work with the town of Buckland because it's going to serve Buckland residents also.
It's in Shelburne.
Does Buckland have a shelter now that the Shelburne residents could go to? Do we know these things? You know, there's too many unknowns here right now. And again, yes, putting money towards drawings when you don't even know the location, that's rather foolish.
I disagree because here's why I want to go the methodical steps. Step one, step two, step three. Right now,
First step is determine the need in the building. Is there a need?
there is a need. I think that we've identified that there is a need, but let's stop and let's not get ahead of ourselves and start talking about shelters, where we're going to be when we don't have the step one completed yet. I'm trying to put a plan forward so year by year by year, you don't have what?
Tom, the debate we're having here is a disagreement about what step one is. And
Okay.
the people who are pushing back on you are suggesting that step one is to find, well, Jim is saying step one is to determine the need, and step two is to find the location that best addresses that need. And step three is then to draw the drawings. You're moving it around and saying step one is to set aside the money for the drawings. So that's where the disagreement is.
I think we're all on the same page in that aspect, in that I think it would be one heck of a tough sell at town meeting to say, I'd like money for drawings, but I'm not sure where it'll go or how we'll pay for the generator after we get it. So, but this is all just this is what we do in this process at this point is review the request, kick it around. We got good feedback from everybody. We'll ponder that until we do our future meetings with the Finance Committee to kick around specific opportunities. And Andrew, I'll give you a minute or two before we open up to our next.
I just wanted to leave Tom with one other piece of information, which is in speaking with my hat on as a sewer commissioner, we are in the process of exploring a generator for the pumping station for the sewer district, which pumps across the river from the location down at the bottom of Deerfield Avenue. So that process of updating that pumping equipment is underway with engineering drawings and grant seeking and all the rest. And one of the projects there is to put a generator down at the bottom of Deerfield Avenue to serve that pumping station. And once we began discussing that, the question arose, could that generator also serve town hall in the event of an emergency? So Current Electric is doing some exploration of code issues around whether you could bring wires up the hill from there to plug into town hall or not. But that's just another piece of generator information I leave in your hopper.
If
Well,
I
you-
could just add one thing that we're missing here is that the hazard mitigation plan and the emergency management plan for the town indicated that there couldn't be a shelter designated unless that shelter really had a generator. So I think the Cowell Gym was great, but they said we can't designate it. This is from MEMA. We can't designate it as a shelter unless there's an emergency energy supply. So I get the cart before the horse, but I also get the horse before the cart, depending on whose perspective you're using. So I just want to throw that out there. And I think also with Tom not having the final commitment from the rec committee about this, he can't pursue Cowell Gym specifically until he gets the okay from them.
Well, keep us posted on this, Tom, as you pursue those other steps about getting their input and so on. And we will all ponder this and discuss it at our future meetings. And I thank you for presenting both very clearly, and we'll figure it out at some point. It's 6:07. I think we should move on and open up our next presentation from the Mohawk Trail Regional School District. And we have Cheryl, Superintendent. I see Martha Thurber is here. So who would like to begin?
Hi, everybody. I can kick us off. Am I able to share my screen?
Yes.
Okay. I am now the co-host. I feel the power. Okay. Just gonna do this. Okay. Are you seeing just
We're not
the
seeing it in
slide?
slide view yet. We're seeing it's not in presentation view.
Okay.
There it is.
I think I'm
That should
going.
work.
Okay, we're good. All right.
Well, we're seeing all the slides over to the side.
It's
Yeah.
still
It's
not
not,
in
you want
user
the
view.
play there. There you go.
Now you got it.
Perfect.
All right. So thank you for being here. Unfortunately, now my presenter notes have disappeared. So if I forget to thank anyone, I apologize. It is really a pleasure to be here and see everyone to give you an update. We are affectionately calling this our road show. So I thank Paul and Willow for being here, and also Martha. Martha Thurber, obviously the school committee chair for Mohawk Trail. Ken Birch is part of this team, coming around to all of the select board and finance committees to make these presentations. And unfortunately, he couldn't be here tonight.
Cheryl, if you want to go back to notes view, that's fine with me.
Okay. I think I would, only because I'm going to panic. And I will totally
Don't worry
forget
about
something.
it.
Okay.
It was completely visible. Go right ahead.
Okay. All right.
And I see Willow. Thank you for joining us as well. Our school committee, one of our school committee representatives are on.
Okay. So tonight, we are going to share the analysis from Burke 12 of the 5 models that have been under consideration. And our
Can I-
goal,
Sorry, Cheryl, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We are not seeing anything on the screen right now.
oh my goodness.
We'll get there eventually. It's
We
okay.
will. We will. Okay. Hold on. Okay. Ooh. I promise that wasn't me.
Are you sharing the screen? There you go.
Working on it.
That's my daughter's wedding.
Whoops.
If anybody
Yay.
is interested. Okay. How's that?
There you go.
And you're only seeing the
No, we see the
slide.
slides on the side, but that's okay. I can
Okay.
see that.
Okay. Great. Okay. So this is us coming out and sharing with you the results of Burke 12's analysis of the 5 models. So we are assuming that you folks, because of how engaged you've been in all of our prior meetings, that you have the background knowledge. And if you don't, Martha has a little 3-pager that she can send your way. And there's also a bunch of information on the website. Our goal in this meeting and in all of our meetings with the community is to hear from a variety of the community, including all of our municipal leaders, our students, our families around this idea of the next phase of our work. So, as I said, I'm going to go kind of over these because my assumption is that you have this information, and because I am not able to present my PowerPoint in such a efficient manner, we're just going to go really fast now. We did talk about challenges, the charge of the work. Let's see. Oh, there we go. My goodness. The 5 models again. Where we want to land tonight is in a couple of areas. There are some really big ideas that are pretty logical that are coming out of the analysis, and then we want to get into the models with you. So from the very high level, you all know this because you feel it every single time you meet as committees. We cannot escape the pressure created by funding gaps and the stress that that creates between the rising town assessments and the reductions that you ask for so that we can keep assessments low. So there's this tension that's happening, and if we do nothing, then those tensions are just going to keep increasing. Interestingly, in the 5 models, there's a wide range of potential savings and efficiencies that can happen. So when we're talking about the savings, we're talking about on the low end, about 400,000, depending on the model that we look at, all the way up to 5.3 million. And that's per year. So there's this range of savings that we can think about how to use in both helping keep assessments through operating efficiencies, but then also reinvest in our schools. Martha, do you want to say something?
Yes, I think the 5.3 million and the 400,000 are the cumulative, or what you'd get in the 5th year. I'm not
Yes.
sure that and I think it's a cumulative over 5 years, but we'll get to that when we get there.
One of the key findings also is that there are educational benefits to consolidating efforts. And that doesn't mean that we don't understand that often our schools are the center of our community and that there's some real tradition and belovedness in our, particularly our small elementary schools, but there is a point where small is too small. And then um, the more large scale consolidations with larger amounts of savings will require capital investments and partnerships with the MSBA. And MSBA is the Massachusetts School Building Authority. And we partner with them as school districts when we are looking at any kind of large scale renovation, large scale addition, large scale new construction is one part of their work. And then the other part, which we have been involved in, is the repair side of their work. Okay. And then finally, it's pretty logical, I think, that a single campus offers the most efficiencies and opportunities. It offers flexibility for the future, a contemporary facility for all students in our 8 towns. But it also, as I mentioned, requires absolutely the most amount of change for everyone. And that's something that we're trying to measure as we share our work out in the community.
No, just up the top. Oh, I don't know if you can click on that.
Bob, would you mute yourself?
Yeah, how do I do that?
Click on the microphone. There you go. Thank you. Sorry, Cheryl, go ahead.
Okay. So when we presented this deck to Holly and Charlemont, we had the timeline for our next phase last, but they felt like it would be better for us to talk about our next steps so that you're not thinking about that as we go through the models, right? So we've done phase 1, we are in phase 2, and once we are done with phase 2, we'll be moving to phase 3. And phase 3 has, on this timeline, 2 component parts, right? The top is the phase 3 work that we hope to continue with Burke 12, that continues with analyzing and modeling community outreach and thinking about the regional agreement. Because of the regional agreement, there would need to be a vote of the 8 towns in order to move forward, right? This is not something that the district can do without a vote of the towns. And I want to make that really clear. Now, as you can see on October 26th, if in October 26th we are having an 8-town vote on a regional agreement, MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, their timeline is going along the bottom. And so in order to prepare for any potential large-scale renovation, construction, or addition, we need to begin in April of this year to prepare and submit a statement of interest. And your conversation with Tom, I think, before clearly is ringing in my brain. As you say, cart, horse, cart. The one thing I will say about this is that it is absolutely non-binding. So we can put in a statement of interest, and if we get to October and there is not a town vote of approval, we just simply remove the statement of interest. There's no harm, no foul, no penalty, and we do not move forward with any building project. So does that make sense? I can see Rick and Andrew in my screen, but that's it.
Yep, makes sense to
Okay.
me too.
Okay. So you're going to hear that the district is going to be preparing and submitting a statement of interest for building, for construction. That does not mean that any decision has been made. It just means that we are in the queue because that process takes 6 to 8 years. Okay?
Mhm.
Great.
All right. So now I'm just going to turn it over to Martha.
Okay, so the first of the 5 models that we asked Bert 12 to model was simply doing nothing, just basically projecting the status quo into the future. And what that shows basically is that we could find potentially some efficiencies that might save us around $400,000 over a period of time. But at the same time, if we don't do anything, the assessments would likely rise somewhere between 4.7 to 5.1% a year. And certainly this doesn't help in any way make us more sustainable or relieve any of the fiscal pressures at the town level. So we asked them to model that just as sort of a baseline so that you would know what we can kind of compare it to. So on the next slide, Cheryl's doing the slideshow. I'm just doing the commentary here. So you can see that the result of this is, again, there's an unsustainable financial pressures in the first, in FY25. I will say that Jake was doing and Bert 12 were doing all of these analyses prior to the finalization of our FY26 budget. So you'll see a lot of FY25 numbers. The FY26 isn't exactly the same number as our assessment number, but this gives you a general idea. So if your assessments in FY25 were about 14 million, by the time you get to FY 2030, your assessments are closing in on 18 million if we do nothing. So on the next slide, what am I doing? Let me go on the next slide. Where am I? Okay. So what this slide does is it shows you what Shelburne's operating assessments are compared to what the total assessments. The total assessments are your orange bar. The Shelburne portion is the blue bar. And again, Shelburne's assessment for FY25 was about 2.87 million. It's about 2.96 million actually for FY26. But if you look at the chart by the end of FY 2030, your assessment is likely to rise somewhere around $3.63 million. Again, this is just a baseline number so that you can begin to just have something to compare it with.
All right, so Model 2 is merging the 2 districts, Hollimont and Mohawk Trail, together. There is, like the status quo, a very modest financial relief. However, we would still be maintaining 5 schools, and the operational efficiencies of central office and the 2 districts remain because we are already doing that work through the shared services. Now, one of the things that will happen when we bring these 2 districts together would be that the Mohawk Trail towns would see an increase in their assessments, while Holly and Charlemont would see a reduction. The other piece that I want to mention here is that in considering bringing the 2 districts together, if we are considering in the future a building project of some kind, and our buildings are getting older, and to Tricia's point, they are not climate ready. So there's a lot of thinking about how to get our buildings ready for climate mitigation, climate effect mitigation. Then we really seriously need to consider how and when we bring the districts together, because the MSBA will reimburse our building costs at another 6%. So right now, we, as Mohawk Trail, we get reimbursed at about 63% for the costs of new building renovation or addition. If we bring two districts together and build a bigger region, then we can see an additional 6% reimbursement on the debt. I mean, on the cost of the project. And that's important to remember as you consider just merging the districts. Again, no real impact on the assessment and no savings. Again, much like models 1 and 2, bringing grade 6 to Mohawk Trail has very modest savings. This has been proposed before as part of an outline of sustainability steps to take. This was at a time when the decision was made to close Heath, and once Heath was closed, then bringing 6th grade up to Mohawk Trail and potentially looking at Coleraine Central as the next closure as the district gained space in some of the classroom, in some of the schools. At the time, there was not a sense of urgency around that work. One of the things that we're hoping to do through these meetings and through this work with Burke 12 is to set the stage of urgency. There is a real urgency in how these pressures are aligning, whether it's aging buildings, rising costs, declining enrollment. All of these things are coming together so that right now there is a sense of urgency around, can we make a really good decision about how we educate kids, not in the next 5 years, but for 5 to 30 years. And that's sort of this pause and the place that we're in right now. So moving grade 6, like the first two models, does not provide any substantial fiscal relief. And it does present some pressure around a community that has in the past not passed moving grade 6 to Mohawk Trail Regional. So there's a tension there as well and a skepticism. So with that, we will go to, so this is where we start talking about the different models and the total assessments, whether we are using models 1 and 2 with the status quo and models 3 with base efficiencies and base plus efficiencies. So base efficiencies are modest and are efficiencies that we can gain at Mohawk Trail Middle School, High School, and through central office. We are working right now, for example, on aligning the schedules so that we can more efficiently use our staff. Those are things that can happen still with moving grade 6 up. However, there are base plus efficiencies that are much more aggressive with central office. However, we need those positions at central office when our district is comprised of 5 separate buildings. So we need full facilities, we need transportation, we need all of the positions to support 5 buildings. And this chart does show the blue bar in this chart represents the status quo over time. So the total operating assessments for Shelburne from year to FY25 to year 2030. And then each of the colored bars, orange is the model 1, remember efficiencies plus base, and then model 2 again, efficiencies plus base and Model 3. And you can see that there's just not a lot of savings that the district can then use to reinvest in our educational programming moving forward.
Okay.
I'm going to pass it to Martha.
Okay. So Model 4, we actually did in three different ways. We focused ultimately on kind of two of those. We ran the consolidation of elementary schools, closing 3 elementary schools, which would leave 1 elementary school open, closing 2 elementary schools, which would leave 2 open, and then closing just 1 elementary school, which would leave 3 open. We ultimately asked them to focus primarily on options A and B, which is having just 1 school or having just 2 elementary schools. So you can, in the finance section of this slide, you can see that scenario 1, your savings are somewhere between, with having just 1 elementary school, your savings are somewhere between 3.3 and 5.2 million. And with 2 elementary schools, it's more like 2.3 to 3.9 million. If you have 3 elementary schools, it drops considerably down to $1.5 million to 2.9. Consolidating all the elementary schools will require a grade reorganization, at least sending the 6th grade to Mohawk Trail in many of the scenarios. And you'll see in a minute a chart that shows you kind of where students fit and where they don't fit under these various things. And it also would require, as Cheryl has mentioned, some capital investment in significant construction or renovation. So on the next slide, again, I'm just showing kind of advantages and disadvantages. The advantages are your economies of scale. There's some class size balancing that you can do when you have all the grades, all of the grade children in one place. You don't have, certainly if you have an individual, in our elementary schools now, we only have 1 class per grade, except at BSE where there are 2. So it doesn't really matter if you have 10 kids in the class or 20 kids in the class, you still need the teacher. It also would provide larger student cohorts, which expands the peer opportunities for the students, and it provides equitable access to all of the services in our elementary grades so that everybody in the elementary schools would be able to get all of the services. So on a financial impact, on the next slide, you can see that Shelburne's operating assessment, assuming scenario A, which again is 1 elementary school and 2 elementary schools before any debt. So that's what this is showing you. Again, the blue bar is the status quo. The orange is the scenario A, which is the single elementary school, and scenario B, which is having 2, is the gray bar. Under scenario A, your assessment would drop by about $695,000 in the first year, but the cumulative savings over the 5 years is about $3.66 million. And if you notice again, by the end of 5 years, you're paying about what you're paying right now, but you'll have received $3.66 million in savings. Under scenario B, your assessment drops by about $480,000 in the first year, with cumulative savings over 5 years of about $2.5 million. And again, this is before any debt. So in a minute, we'll look at the added costs of the various levels of debt. But that gives you a sense of, again, having 1 elementary school or 2 elementary schools. So on the next slide, we get to kind of the granddaddy of the models. This is the one that results in the most change. This is Model 5, which would create a single campus for all students at the Mohawk Trail Regional School. If you look on the finance section, these can result in savings in base savings of about 3.4 to 4.7 million, and base plus, which is much more aggressive, would save somewhere between 3.9 and 5.3 over the 5 years. Your educational opportunities would be accessible to everyone, all kinds of specialized services and supports and enrichment. The school community would have a modern educational environment with updated technology and environmental standards, air conditioning, and other things that we can't really do in our buildings today. A single campus obviously maximizes the efficiencies that support the near and longer term fiscal sustainability, and requires the largest capital investment and the relationship with the MSBA in renovation or construction. So if you look at the next slide again, you're just going a little bit deeper into the advantages and the disadvantages. You get your maximum economies of scale, you get class size balancing, larger cohorts, and you get a lot of flexibility for future changes. On a single campus, again, you can make changes in grade levels, in grade class sizes, making them larger or smaller as you need to do that, which we can't do right now. It also would allow us to provide some pathway programs that we don't do right now in the high school that would, we hope, help us to retain and attract and retain students. The disadvantage is primary one is that requires the renovation and construction that will necessitate a partnership with the MSBA, and in some scenarios it would potentially be more expensive to do that work than you'd get in savings. But we'll take a look at that on the next slide. So looking at your assessment for just the single campus, again, this looks at it right now before any debt. So your assessment would drop by about $714,000 in the first year, but the cumulative savings over 5 years would be about 3.77 million. And by the end of that 5 years, you're again paying just about what you're paying now, but you will have the 3.77 million in savings. And in just a second, we're going to go look at the what debt does to this outlook. But I'll turn it back to Cheryl.
All right. We're going to take a peek at facilities for a second first. This slide represents where students can physically fit. In other words, what are the building capacities for each of the buildings? And this doesn't consider whether or not the buildings can currently educate students, because at the elementary school, for example, if you bring elementary school students to Mohawk Trail Regional, there are no classrooms for kindergarten students that have bathrooms built in, right? So it's middle school sized and above. So yes, by sheer numbers of students that we have in the district, we would all fit. However, there would have to be substantial renovation, reconfiguration, and change made of the building itself in order for it to accommodate all of our students. So you can see for a single elementary school pre-K 6 at BSE with Coleraine, Sanderson, and Hollamont closing, we do not fit there. You can see the red boxes mean that we do not fit currently, and that substantial renovations would have to occur in order for the students to be able to be educated in that environment. This is very preliminary. It is only numbers of students. Phase 3, if that is if consolidation and closure of schools with renovation, addition, or construction is a direction that the district wants, that the towns would like us to go in, then phase 3 is where we really start to look at where can it be based on all of the parameters around traffic flow and site maps and all of the things. So it's really, it is very, what's the word I'm looking for? We can't think about where a new elementary school or an addition to an elementary school will go because we just don't have enough information yet So again, I'm going back to that first conversation that I heard, cart, horse, horse, cart. So with that being said, just thinking about could this work in various scenarios? In the upper left-hand corner, you're seeing a conceptual idea of building a second story, perhaps on on Buckland Shelburne Elementary School, to make Buckland Shelburne Elementary School potentially the single site elementary school. However, as I've said, there will be a ton of work to determine whether or not Buckland Shelburne's site is efficient, effective, and safe for students, given all the kinds of land use, landlockness, traffic patterns, size of streets. Like that is all next step. But it's an idea that, we as a steering committee are considering as we move forward. The bottom right is a single campus where if we think about readjusting how we currently use the building with an addition of specific classrooms for our youngest elementary school students, then you can see where middle school is right now. If you're familiar with the school, that can change into some mid and upper elementary school classrooms. We can add in the blue spaces some of the pathway programs that Martha was talking about, a fitness space, and then the middle school and the high school fully take the back portion of what is now really just the high school. So this is the idea of considering existing buildings with additions, and or the final consideration would actually be in cost and whether or not renovation will allow us to have the kind of building that we want without bringing the building up to code, which can out cost or be too expensive for us to do. In which case you're looking at a new building because it's less expensive, although probably not environmentally as friendly, but that's where it is right now. So this would be the debt service for varying amounts 5 years forward. This is for Shelburne. If we were looking in general, we're going to look at the $80 million project. Okay, so for $80 million, if that was the cost of the project, we anticipate about 70% reimbursement. So the debt amount would be $24 million. And so for Shelburne, you're looking at the annual debt services of $310,000 and then slowly down from there. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Martha so she can explain the really complicated slide that has the annual debt services applied to the models.
So here, we look at the impact of this on Shelburne's operating assessment. If we move to a single elementary school, which is 4A, so 4A without debt, 4A with debt, or separately the centralized campus, again, F before debt and after debt. The debt assumptions that Burke 12 used are an $80 million project with 70% MSBA reimbursement. So that gets you down to I think it's the 24 million. A 25-year loan with an interest rate of 5%. Now, clearly all of these assumptions, you move them around, you're going to get different results. Under the single elementary scenario, your assessment would drop by if you were paying the debt service, your assessment would drop by about $384,000 in the first year, and you'd still have cumulative savings over 5 years of about $2.1 million. On the centralized campus, your assessment drops by about $400,000 in the first year, with a cumulative savings over 5 years of about $2.2 million. But under either scenario, you end up paying less every year than you do if we just did nothing. And I think that's what we want to, emphasize, is that you've got savings here that if you do nothing, we end up with nothing. If we do something, even if it costs a little, costs something, and it's not a little, it's a lot, we still, under these scenarios, we still come, Shelburne and other towns still come out ahead. And of course, as Cheryl was mentioning, the next phase of this project is to, once we decide as a community on a scenario or a model that we really want to develop and take it to the next level, that's when you really can begin to find how much is it really going to cost to do what we think we'd like to do. What do the financial conditions look like? It's very difficult and extremely not necessarily always accurate to project where interest rates are going, or some of the other economic conditions, the cost of materials and whatnot. But if we know the cost of doing nothing. So that's, I think, one of the things that we need to keep in mind as we decide where we want to focus our energy going forward.
Okay. One of the things that we know about and hear about often is transportation, and we just want to touch base on this with folks. We understand it can be a concern for parents. We also, as a district, would be looking at how can we mitigate those concerns. For things like ride length, are we able to put smaller vans on the roads to get some of our most outlying students to school more efficiently? Actually, more cost efficiently, but also more time efficiently. Can we reduce to one tier? And obviously, that means putting K through 12 on the same bus. And that does bring some concern to our families, and we know that. But there are many, many rural districts and several in Massachusetts that do have a single tier run. And thinking about things like, can we use some of the savings in transportation to hire monitors for the buses so that as our transition might occur, we can mitigate some of those challenges or some of those concerns for parents. And we also know that just the ability to employ drivers is something that we would be keeping in mind as we thought about transportation in any kind of new organizational structure. Heat maps. Like, I love heat maps. I love, 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 love them. So anyway, I will get off my heat map podium here, but this shows you really the geographic spread of our towns in terms of miles and the towns that we serve, but where our students are located. And I think it tells a really good story of how and why things are expensive when we think about how we educate kids within these towns. So we have been thinking about redistricting and potentially, as we move through this process, not having catchment areas of students by town, but more by geographic location. And that could be something, particularly if there is one elementary school in one part of the district, a new elementary school, which captures a larger part of the heat map, and another elementary school that could potentially stay open to capture a heat map as well. So you're looking at, Coleraine, for example. There is a lot of heat up in Coleraine that could capture Heath, Hollamont, Charlemont. And then you've got all of that heat in Shelburne, around Buckland, Shelburne, and Mohawk Trail. And then you've got quite a bit around, although it's very disparate, around Sanderson Academy. So it's really a cool thing to look at. There's a lot more information on the website. So I really encourage you to go in there and dig around. Everything we're sharing with you tonight is from like 100,000 feet. And there is every foot of foundation in the reports that back up all of these findings. In summary, I don't want you to think that we're only considering the finances, but we know that's your lens often. So I wanted to talk a little bit about educational programming and what these changes could potentially mean. So mission and vision alignment on a single campus, having everyone together, certainly provides for leadership, for staff, and for students to receive a very unified student experience under a mission and vision that's truly aligned. It also allows for equitable access for all student supports, enrichment, and extended learning. And that's really critical right now, particularly as we're seeing increases in our high need student population. That includes special education, English language learners, and high poverty students. So having the single campus probably offers the most significant ways for us to offer a strong student experience and also equitable access to learning. That's the same for academics as well. For our staff, being the singleton teacher of a grade level is really challenging. It's really difficult. So having multiple classrooms in a grade level with multiple teachers of those classrooms allows for more professional dialogue and more professional support on a day-to-day basis, which means better outcomes for kids. And we know that to be true in the research. And then, the idea that a single campus or consolidated elementary schools does allow for more stakeholder engagement and involvement pre-K through 12. And the fact that we would be able to have and run programs around pathways for health and human services, for example, for childcare, and for preschool. So, having more of a community and stakeholder engagement around these programs that extend out from a single campus into our communities. I think a good example of that is the Y and our seniors who are doing their Y exercises with us in the small gym at Mohawk Trail Regional. That's the kind of energy and community thinking that, a single campus could provide to our 8 towns. And for me, I understand that for every single person that has a reason to stay in the school they're in, whether it's because they can walk to their school or because of a special program like Hey at their school, that, a single elementary school does not mean that those things go away. It means that we can bring the best of all of our elementary schools together so that all of the students benefit from the amazing opportunities that our kids have. So I'm going to kick it over to Martha.
Sure. So thank you all for sticking with us through all of this. We just want to make it really clear that no decisions have been made. That's why we're doing all of these meetings, community meetings, and meetings with all of you and your counterparts in every town. Nothing can happen until the town residents agree that it should happen. Anything that we do will require a change, many changes perhaps, to our regional agreement. And under our regional agreement, we can't do anything until all towns agree. And finally, substantial changes will take time. This isn't something that's going to, for example, there's concern about, how many staff people are going to be dismissed if we do A, B, or C. And we're looking at attrition over time. We're hoping for most of that or a lot of that. So it's going to take some time to do all of this, but it's very important to remember the ramifications of doing nothing, because these pressures that we've talked about and that you all have seen with all of us over the past years are going to persist. The sustainability process is a choice that we will make to proactively choose the solutions that we want to have instead of having to simply react to the financial pressures, which will give us many fewer options and a lot less opportunity to actually sustain our educational programs as well. So thank you all for listening to all of us. And now we're hoping that we can listen to you and get some feedback from you. There is also, I will say, on the website, 2district8towns.org. There's a survey that we're asking folks who are in the community at our community meetings to complete, and we'd love it if you all would feel like you would want to complete that as well. Kind of says which things do you feel most positive about, which do you feel most negative about. It just gives us another way to assess kind of community. We're trying to find community consensus, which is pretty hard to do across 8 communities. But that's what we really are hoping to do. So I will stop talking and hope that you all will take it up.
Well, that was very well presented, I must say. Whole lot of information that you've boiled down into a presentation, and definitely makes one think about all those options. And so your next steps, you explained, are going to be focusing in that phase 3 to basically look at the last 2 columns and get more detailed as to the pros and cons of those last 2, or are you looking at all 5?
Yeah, I think it depends. If people say we are, all we want to do is close 1 elementary school. That's all we're willing to do. Then that's what we're going to have to dig into. So it really depends what comes out of these. Obviously, if people say over my dead body, you're not going to close my elementary school or do anything else, then we don't have a lot more analysis to do. We simply have to say, okay, if that's what you want to do, then here's the costs. And now we know kind of what that looks like. Are you willing, and can towns afford to do that? Because we're also very aware that there are some towns that are bumping up against their levy limits. And it's not a matter of will, our towns have been extraordinarily supportive of education for many, many years, in very difficult circumstances, and we're most appreciative of that. But at some point, you're not going to be able to do that. So we need to be aware of that. We just want people to understand what the implications are for these various ideas, and then what do you want us to do? And if depending on what do you want us to do is, then we go and dig as deeply as we can and as we need to.
Great. Andrew, do you have any questions or thoughts?
Yes, I do. Lots of questions and thoughts. I just wanted to offer a couple of thoughts, and maybe there are questions as well. One is, in thinking about this as a 25-year project, which is where the MSBA is involved, if it involves, significant building and debt, that's 2 full generations of students, going through 12 years of it, or 13 years of education. And so the experience of the second generation, the people who are starting preschool 12 years from now, assuming, this one campus vision were to come to pass, would be very different than the first group, that would be partially in one place and then to another, and would be making a different set of choices. And so I'm just thinking, I just wanted to offer that as one, part of the 25-year vision to think about. And the other being that in that, mix of parental choices that might occur if a big change were made, I'm just wondering if the Berkshire 12 group has done any sort of scenario developing or modeling of what happens if that kind of change produces a lot of school choicing, in some of the outlying towns where their elementary schools are closed, or perhaps even a Worthington style rebellion by one town, where they say, well, no, hell no, we're going to form our single town elementary school and go it alone. And I'm just wondering if you all have considered those possible scenarios in terms of how many students might wind up in this central school. And secondly, in mitigating that, what kinds of branding or modeling of both elementary and high school education might we do, in addition to a new building or refurbished buildings or whatever, but might actually create a real attractive resource for our towns and maybe beyond too.
So great food for thought. So typically, if there is a new building or a significant addition renovation, history tells us that the town and the district and or the region that builds that building or builds that addition actually attracts students. And that the pressure to school choice is actually is not present. That happened when I was in Granby, and we built we built an addition of a pre-K 1-2 wing that then there was a major renovation to the backside of the building, which was then the 4-5-6. And we did not, and we were definitely a school choice out kind of situation. As much like us here, there's the real decision making around grade 7 and 9. We saw a reversal of that at the elementary school. To your point, have we done much investigation of that? No. Beyond what we see in most districts happening. The other piece I would say is that your point about, branding is spot on. And our phase 3 work will have a component of educational visioning, because I do think that that is a space where, regardless of where we end up structurally or organizationally, we need to do that work. And it's something that really can bring a community together, particularly 8 towns spread out over 250 square miles. Ed visioning around what do we want for our students, pre-K through 12. And that work has started with the Bar Foundation in grades 7 through 12, but we really need to bring in the elementary school community into that discussion. And this would be a great opportunity to do that.
Good. I was just driving home with Andrea from a little weekend away in Great Barrington, which sadly, is an example of a South County community that went through this process and then voted it down.
Yeah.
And
Well aware.
and we were thinking of that kind of branding on the way back. So I'll offer you the acronym that we came up with as in our drive home, which was the Mohawk Trail Free Academy of Arts, Science, and Technology. There's a good acronym there, FAST.
Nice.
But thinking about, something that, because the irony here is that where the savings occur is in consolidating elementary schools, but where the major shrinkage has been in Mohawk is at the high school level. And so that's where I think a new vision needs to occur to get people to stay and to reverse the choicing flow so that we begin to choice people in again.
Yeah. I mean, some of the work that we're doing in the high school now has reversed we're now net positive on choice the last couple of years, especially this year. So some of that is happening, but a lot more of it needs to happen. And as Jake has always said, Jake Eberwein from Burke 12 has said, you've got to have a value proposition that makes all of the kind of pain that you're asking people to potentially to go through worth it. And that's definitely what we need to find in phase 3 if we decide to go in that direction.
Yeah, and I think I would add, a status quo will eventually mean that we will be making huge reductions in the elementary schools. So the kinds of programs that our families are looking for in terms of music and art and PE, we will not be able to continue in, running 5 or 4 separate elementary schools. And that's where the efficiencies can be turned into something for the future.
Does our finance committee have anything they would like to share or ask?
I think we're all set, Rick.
Okay.
Just a lot to digest for now.
There is. There's a lot of information. And as
Yeah.
Cheryl says, there's tons of more information on the website if you want to go deeper into these numbers and find out exactly how they are determined and what formulas is used and so forth. You can go and find every assumption for every one of these numbers on that website. It's just amazing the amount of work that Burke 12 has been able to do for us.
Tricia, did you have any comments or thoughts?
No, I feel very similar to the finance committee. It's a lot of information, and I had the PowerPoint open on my computer too to try to get the numbers bigger, and it was still pretty overwhelming. So I'll be looking at it more closely, and thank you for talking us through it. You answered most of my questions that I had ahead of time.
Yeah, and I think I would add, please fill out the survey, but also please pick up the phone, talk to Willow, talk to Paul, talk to anyone on the steering committee, pick up the phone and talk to me. We want to hear from you because one of the things in addition to urgency is that we want people to feel like they were part of the process. We don't want to get to town meeting floor and say, this is the first I'm hearing of this, right? The question we're asking is what is the best way to educate all of our students, not just the 2 towns that make up Coleraine Central or Sanderson or BSE or Hollamont or Mohawk Trail Regional. Right now, the question is what is the very best way that we can do that? And if people don't talk now and we move down the path of, let's say, a single campus, and then all of a sudden people are like, oh, we didn't want that. Well, you have to be involved in the process all along the way. I say every day, this is Cheryl Stanton, superintendent of the Mohawk Trail Regional Schools, where learning and growth is our focus, right? So this is all about our learning and growth and community and courage. We have to do this together.
Terrific.
Okay. Willow, hi.
Could I add one thing?
You may, Willow, go ahead.
So as the subcommittee chair of communications, we're obviously, this is, as Martha and Cheryl called the road show, is continuing along to the different schools. I would also really welcome your thoughts around getting the word out. We have so much that's happening through Burke 12, through the district, through Carol Foote, who does all the community outreach. I think she does an amazing job. We meet and brainstorm and always try to think of ways of getting that information out to people so that they feel informed, both at the upcoming town meetings when we certainly would want to give some information and some updates. And then as we continue these conversations forward. And so I would just, always welcome your thoughts and feedback about how to get more information into the community. So that's all I just wanted to add.
Super. Well, thank you so much,
you.
everyone. You did a great job. Very comprehensive. My brain hurts, but it's small. So,
And
we'll,
Thank you.
I don't want to speak on behalf of Martha, but I'm happy, and I'm sure Jake would be happy to come back and
Absolutely.
answer questions too. I mean, we get this is a lot. We live it. We're living it every day. So we are like rattling it off, you know. So happy to come back and chat, answer questions, and if we're not clear, you know, happy to clarify. Because I always say we don't know what we don't know. If people don't bring it forward, then we're just making assumptions that we're good. So
well, I think you
Thank
did a
you.
great job, and I thank you so much.
you're
Appreciate it.
welcome.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Yeah.
Have a great one.
Okay, let's resume our regular meeting. That was our last assigned appointment. We're on to old business. We have item A is Community Action Food Pantry Services regarding possible funding. We did get a response about the minimum that they thought they could live with, which went from 50 to 40, meaning 20,000 from Shelburne, 20 from Buckland. And one of the things that I found amusing, I don't know if that's the right word, but caught my attention in their response was we had asked them to look at other towns' use and are they being asked to help kick in to support it because of their residents. And the comment was in their email of the 21st of February was the other communities do not receive CDBG funding, and we have never approached them to support the pantry since the majority of the regular visitors are residents of Shelburne and Buckland. The total visitors of Shelburne and Buckland are 51.5%. Yeah, technically that's a majority, but it didn't make my head spin. To me, that's 48.5% of their use is other towns who aren't pitching in as far as people using it. So I didn't feel like they answered that question for us, just my observations. Any other comments from Tricia or Andrew on this item?
Rick?
Yes,
I was
Andrew.
just going to say that I think that the question that they asked us is one that we do need to ask ourselves, which is, are we interested in using the CDBG program again? Because I think there are some real issues we have to address there, including finding a new grant writer and identifying projects that we think are eligible and competitive.
And it's not a question we can answer, is it?
I think Terry's got something there.
Linda Overing has agreed to come in after town meeting to talk about the program. She's not sure that that program is going to be around much longer, the way things are going. And the town would have to have a project that's ready, project that's engineered. The town of Buckland is currently in a 3-town application for housing rehab, but there's no residual funds to put toward the food pantry. So they too are going to be relying on their Housing One trust funds for the first year, the one and only year at this point, to help supplement the pantry. And I assume that many of the towns couldn't contribute because of the anti-aid amendment, that unless they have housing trust funds or community development block funds, they can't contribute.
So I got it was not a feeling, it was clear. They're asking if it looked like we're going to be able to support them going forward. And we really can't answer it because it doesn't look like there's an immediately recognizable option to do that. I think at this point, being able to, we did vote already, the housing authority to take that to town meeting for the funding of 20,000.
The board was supportive of placing an article on the town meeting warrant seeking a transfer from the Housing Trust Fund.
And that would get them another year to figure out other funding sources that they may be able to find as well.
Yes.
So I think
Well,
that's,
Terry, I don't remember exactly the language of that vote, but I would hope that it says up to 20,000 and matched by the town of Buckland.
There was no formal vote, but I have confirmation from the town of Buckland that they too will be putting it on their warrant.
Okay, because I feel strongly that if we do it, we need to do it as a partnership.
Mhm.
I agree with that.
So do we need a vote to make that happen, or is that just understood?
I'm willing to move that we, put that before the voters to say up to $20,000 and matched by the town of as matched by the town of Buckland.
Okay, I can second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We'll put the matter to a vote. Andrew,
Aye.
Tricia,
Aye.
and I am I. The motion passes 3-0-0. Good. All right, we have a communication next from Ted Harvey. This was regarding the Rural Development Coordinator Pilot Project. In a nutshell, they were looking to extend the initial period from 1 year for another 6 months, and they were asking us 4,000, Buckland 4,000, Turner's 4,000, and Northfield 4,000 to make that 6 months continue. Andrew made a good case for why that may be necessary to get things rolling and be able to have a handle on whether it's worth doing it at all. I was kind of thinking we ought to know that within a year, but I'll give you that there's startup time and so on and organization of committees. And so we came back that our retail district is 2 towns, and that we felt we should be putting in only 2,000, and Buckland put in 2,000 for a total of 4 to match the effort in Northfield and Turner's. And we did decide to put that forward for town meeting, and Mr. Harvey has acknowledged that that seemed acceptable, and he was going to reach out to other towns. I don't think we've heard anything since as to what they said. Did we, Terry?
Buckland has agreed to put 2,000 on their warrant as well.
Okay. Terrific.
Do we need a motion to that effect?
We would need a motion to support the pilot program for an additional for a total of 18 months, and to allocate $2,000 at town meeting for this pilot project.
Okay. Yeah, I would make that same motion, and in the same fashion that I made the food pantry motion of up to $2,000 as matched by the town of Buckland, so that we go into it as a partnership. And I think, it might, Terry, if you're going back to that group and just remind them of that municipal versus business district formula, that, if they're looking at it municipally, the municipality of Montague has 5 villages in it. So if they want to approach it from a municipal angle, then that person should theoretically be serving the 5 villages of Montague, as we are serving the village of Shelburne Falls, from a 2-town vantage point. So. And if we're looking at it as a business district project, then there are 3 business districts that we're talking about.
May I ask, I think didn't the email from Heather say that the Buckland Select Board agreed to fund the pilot at 2,000, and so that means that's what's going to go on their warrant. So just in case it doesn't go to the full 2,000, like at town meeting, if they decide to do something else, is that what you're talking about, Andrew?
Yes, I said up to 2,000 as matched by Buckland. Yeah. That leaves open the possibility that a voter in Buckland could say, well, I'd like to amend the motion to $1,500 or something,
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Now that we have a motion and a second, is there further discussion? Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll put the matter to a vote. Andrew?
Aye.
Tricia?
Aye.
And I am aye. Motion passes 3-0-0. Okay. Overtime policy discussion. Andrew, you're up.
Only that if you want, I've talked about overtime with Jeff, and if he wants to bring that back forward to you for a vote, you can either decide that you want to vote on it yourselves without him, or invite him back for more discussion.
Any thoughts, Tricia?
So he will either ask us to vote about it in his presence or outside of his presence, or not bother talking to us at all. Is that what you're saying?
No, this is just, I think Terry just has kept this on as an old business item because we have not completed it. So here it is as a continuation discussion. Do you and Rick want to take some action to move something in this regarding overtime?
Terry has something to add, I think, Rick.
Terry?
It was my understanding that we would pause the discussion until you had an opportunity to meet with Jeff, Andrew, and then it would come back to the board.
That's why I kicked it to you, Andrew.
Oh, yeah, no.
At the last meeting.
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't think there's been any change in the proposal that Jeff has made. He brought forward the 8-hour overtime proposal.
Okay. Well, he hadn't had the documentation that we had at our very first meeting. We wanted to get that to him, give him some time to absorb it, and through you, tell us if that changed his mind. And I think that's where we left it at our last meeting. So he's still asking for the original request.
Yeah, I mean, I think you would, if you want to get it straight from Jeff, you should invite him in and speak with him again about it.
Okay. Do you think?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rick.
No, Tricia, you're up.
I think that one of the issues that came up last time was for the Finance Committee, I think, was going to look into allowing for the vacation to be counted as time worked towards overtime. I don't know if you folks have had time to do that, but I recall that from, I think, 2 meetings ago where this issue came up, where you were going to maybe look into it.
I don't recall that at all.
I don't either.
Okay.
Maybe it happened, but I don't. It didn't stick.
I wonder if you're referring to the survey that I provided everyone, what other communities are doing?
Yeah, I think there was a question about, how much this would actually cost financially to look at it historically, if it's been done, or, well, I'd have to go back and review the video. I'm sorry if I have misspoken. We can move on. Thank you.
If you want me to share my conversation with Jeff, where I left it with Jeff is simply to say that the 40-hour overtime, which we currently have, overtime after 40 versus overtime after 8, is really creating 2 different systems of incentives for employees as to when they use their vacation time. And for the highway superintendent, it's really a management issue of how to make sure that you have available and rested employees when you have snow emergencies. And so, from my perspective, the plus side of the 40-hour system is that it incentivizes, the plus side for the town is that it incentivizes the employee to remain available, i.e. not go on vacation during snow season, so that they can earn overtime. And that if you have an 8-hour system, you're going to have more employees requesting vacation during snow season, possibly, and more need for superintendent more pressure on the superintendent to approve vacations at times when they might not want to do that. And so that's the management issue that arises in those two. It's not a question of is somebody abusing the overtime policy? It's really a question of what incentives do those two different approaches to overtime create?
Well,
And what do you think is the best overall approach to balance the interests of the employees and the town? And I
right.
think, when you look at the chart and say, well, half the towns have done it one way and have done the other way, I don't think there's a clear answer there. So, you can go either way, essentially. And I have voted on both sides of this issue. So I will be abstaining from this vote, just so that both of you know that, because I have voted once one way and once the other way, and I'm not going to vote on this again. So if you all want to take a vote on it, you go right ahead.
Well, I think initially the impression was that we went round and round on this not that long ago, not that many years ago, and that we should look further into it, which we've done at his request. We've received that breakout of what the other towns around us are doing. We had town council input when that decision was made, and I personally didn't see the need at this point to change anything that's on the books right now. I think I remarked previously, and I will again, I think if we pay our employees, especially our longtime employees, the fair going rate, as opposed to only incremental cost of living increases, that everybody's going to be happy. And I think that is something that will be coming before us in this current round of budgeting. And therefore, I would not support making any changes to the policy at this time. Tricia, any further thoughts?
Well, I agree with the 8-hour plus overtime rule for people, because the snow emergencies you can never predict with any certainty, especially in times of climate change. I think you can plan the best you can, but if somebody's going to go the extra mile and make sure, this finance committee has lots to say. Maybe they should talk now where everybody can hear them.
Their comment from the finance committee on the
Like to weigh in?
overtime.
No, we're just bouncing it around amongst ourselves.
I
Okay.
go back to my comments from before. I'm glad it's in your ball, the ball's in your court.
Thank you, Jim.
I think we're done with that matter then. If you're not going to vote, and it sounds like Tricia and I are on opposite sides of this, that it would be futile to bother. But if you'd like to make a motion and actually have a vote, Tricia, I will happily entertain that and second it to put it to a vote. We just know where it's going. Your call.
So it would be to allow the highway department employees to get paid for 8-hour plus overtime rather than a 40-hour week overtime.
That's
Is that yeah, I would move for that. And that would be the responsibility of the highway boss. Oh, I think Terry has something.
You gotta unmute us.
You're removed.
Oh, sorry. I just want to point out that if you're going to make this change, it's not just for the highway. You can't have a policy for one town department and the rest of the town employees a whole different department. It's a policy for the entire town. You know what I mean? You change it for one and all, or not. You just said for the highway department, and it can't be just the highway. It's everybody or nobody,
Fair enough. Thank you,
Just
Terry. I'm
wanted to
sorry
point
for
that
that.
out.
Sure, no, that makes sense. I'm sorry for that mistake. The other issue is, I guess while we're talking about that differential there are people who are exempt and non-exempt. And I think that it's probably not going to impact a ton of other people, right? We have the highway department folks and some of the police officers. Who else is a non-exempt employee? I don't know off the top of my head, so I apologize for not knowing that either.
I don't know.
Primarily highway and police.
Okay, so really we're just talking about them because any kind of overtime policy doesn't apply to anybody else. So I'm going to stick with my 8-hour overtime policy for town employees.
Well, I have seconded your motion. We'll put it, there's no further debate. We'll put the matter to a vote. Tricia
Aye.
and Andrew abstain,
Abstain.
and I am a nay, so the motion fails.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, fiscal year 26, COLA reconsideration. Andrew, you have proposed that we alter, did we put in a temporary or we put in an initial 3%, correct, vote?
Yes.
And Andrew, you have proposed that we increase that.
I was, yeah, and in sort of the same spirit, Rick, that you were mentioning about paying our highway employees well. I think that staying ahead of inflation is important, not just for the highway employees, but for all of the town employees. And we are entering into a very uncertain time in terms of are we going to have tariffs? Are we not going to have tariffs? Will we go into recession? Will we not go into recession? It's pretty up in the air right now, but the underlying inflation rate seems higher than we might have thought, 4 months ago or so. And, and the FERCog has, set its own level at about 3.5%. And that seemed to me to be about the right number given all the uncertainty that we have, but with a kind of what appears to be a rising base level of inflation.
Yep. And their numbers weren't available when we made that first vote to go to 3%. Finance Committee have anything they'd like to weigh in on the possibility to reconsider our initial vote of a 3% cost of living to a 3.5%?
I guess the only thing that I would say is when we spoke about it, we asked how you made the adjustment in the past. You didn't really have, sometimes based on CPI, sometimes not. We made our recommendation based on CPI. When we spoke of it, CPI wasn't even out yet for January of 25. That is now out and it is 3.0%. That gives you anything more to go on, but
You broke up there. It is now what? 3.0%.
3.0.
So what would you like to do, Andrew? You want to make a motion to reconsider?
I would move that we have the across the board increase be at 3.5 so that we stay ahead of CPI for our town employees.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll put the matter to a vote. Andrew?
Aye.
Tricia?
Aye.
I am aye. Motion passes 3-0-0. New business, Bridge Street Bazaar. In your packet is a letter request and last year's Shelburne Falls Porch Music Festival schedule, just to remind us of the happenings that they managed to put together last year. There's a request to hold it again this year on July 13th, a Sunday. And they are requesting that the select board waive the permit fee again this year for this free community event.
So moved.
I'll second.
And seconded. Any further discussion?
Only that I've participated with my loaning my porch to the event for the last several years and have really enjoyed it. I've gotten to meet and get to know some new folks in town, and it's a wonderful event.
Agreed. Put the matter to a vote. Andrew?
Aye.
Tricia?
Aye.
And I am aye. Motion passes 3-0-0. Howell Gym window replacement project bids came in this morning, I think, or were reviewed this morning, and there he is. Mr. Walsh,
Good
would you
evening.
like to address the piece? Did everyone get a chance to get that email and print it out? Tricia and Andrew?
I did. They were really disparate. I was
Mhm.
surprised at the huge difference.
Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Walsh, and tell us your thoughts on this.
Sure. So we actually only had two bidders reply. Several, we actually were in contact with up to six bidders. I can't remember if it's five or six. At the end of the day, the person or the company that we chose to work with, between Terry and I discussing it, was $150 slightly more expensive than another bid. However, taking into consideration what the fees were going to be for lead abatement on any of the windows, any repairs necessary for wood frames, and the concept of doing the first floor in an aluminum clad window with wood interiors on first floor only. We felt like the best value for our dollar would be with Window Depot of South Boston. I have since checked two of their three references, and left a message three times with the third person. And the first two that I spoke with, one was a residential project that did siding and roofing. The other was a woman in Worcester who did windows, and both were incredibly enthusiastic and proactive. That's a wrong proper word, but enthused about the way the company handled them, felt they were the best price available. Their professionalism was exemplary. They cleaned everything up immediately, and in one case there was a slight damage to a deck, which they had fixed within 2 weeks with absolutely no question about paying for it.
John, just to clarify, you said there were only two bids submitted?
Correct.
So why are there three showing on the sheet here?
Oh, I'm sorry. There was a third bid, but it was so high that we did not take it into consideration.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I just wanted to clarify.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it came down to two of the three bidders.
Okay.
The other bidder, not the last one that you just mentioned, didn't attend the pre-bid walkthrough.
Well, it was not a requirement to do a pre-bid walkthrough, but they were encouraged to contact me to do a pre-bid. Of the vendors who did come through, every one of them said that they would just be using the estimation of the measurements that I had done with another contractor, and that they would actually do a final measurement prior to actually ordering the windows if they actually won the contract.
Okay.
Rick?
Yes, Andrew.
If I may, John, just to clarify a few more things,
Sure.
remind me, when we did approve money at last year's town meeting for Cowell Gym renovations, yes?
That's correct. We had, I think it was $50,000 or $55,000.
Oh, that's what I wanted to know, was if this was falling kind of within the range of what we approved, and it sounds like it is.
It's close. We may need to shift a little bit of money into the final payment, but I think here comes Terry with the idea, the perfect answer.
We had allocated funds from ARPA to supplement the Cowell Gym projects, so it's well within the budget.
Right.
Terrific. Well, we have
And John, this will leave you with funds between ARPA and town money for other work that you've got on your list?
No, this will pretty much expend those monies. I do have a bid out for the windows shades inside the gymnasium, but they are covered through a grant from the Green Communities Initiative.
Okay.
Those were the two biggies, yeah.
Sorry, Rick, you're breaking up.
I'd say yes, those were the two big projects that you were looking at. So, well, great. It's your recommendation. We put you in charge of this. You did all the hard work. You and Terry have met, and if you continue with your due diligence of confirming the references and are comfortable, we should have a motion, I would think, to accept the bid of Window Depot of South Boston, contingent on final review of the references and $45,405 total bid plus modest amount for the lead paint mitigation, etc. So what's your
So moved.
Second.
moved and seconded? Put the matter to, well, any further discussion? Put the matter to a vote, Andrew?
Oh, just before I vote, John, do you have anything further to tell us about this project, or have you pretty much laid it out?
Well, I pretty much the only other option here, which is after reviewing the final proposal, we may be able to just to not have to do the attic windows with the aluminum frame wood interiors, since that's really not really seen very easily from the floor or from the ground level. And that would lower the cost if we went with vinyl up there. They would still have the same look as the current windows, which are like a 9/5 or something. It's a very unusual window. But rather than having both sashes going up and down, we're going to have one single hung window with only the lower sash raising, because there's really no need for a double hung window around the attic. And I would like to keep the office. There are two windows in the office and one on the south entrance. I would like to keep them aluminum clad with wood interiors to maintain the historic look, at least close enough that it looks very similar to what we have.
And John, do you need language from the board to give you that flexibility to make those kinds of design and materials decisions, or is the motion we've made sufficient?
I personally, I think that's sufficient, but I would weigh on Terry to let me know if that's permissible.
Yes.
I mean, we have
The motion
permission
is
to make changes during the installation with written notification. So I think that would be fine.
Okay. Well, just speaking as one member, I'm comfortable delegating to you those kinds of implementation decisions, and so my vote is yes on the motion if that is sufficient.
Thank you.
As am I. Tricia?
Aye.
And I am I. Motion
Great.
passes 3-0.
So just the other mention was that part of the thing is that all has to be done by May 30th for the windows. So it will be closed out before fiscal year 26.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you for all the work you put into this.
You're
Excellent
welcome.
job, John. Thanks for all your work for the town.
And the window shade bid is out, and I've already had 2 people interested, so we'll see how that goes.
Excellent.
That's great. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Appreciate it. Sylvia Smith, I see you are on. Clarifying vote to accept Section 3 of C 402 Acts of 2022. Sorry it took so long. Long meeting tonight to get to you. And would you like to give us a quick thumbnail on your request?
Thank you. And it's actually fine that you've been talking for a while, because I was at a previous meeting, so this is working out just fine for me. The request is to for the Board of Managers to be able to move forward with getting some contracts lined up for our transition. We have been in contact with Donna McNichol Council, and she has been, had checked out the district agreement and the votes that are required, and she has felt that one more vote is required of all three select boards in order for us to continue getting the services, contracted services in place so that we can be fully functional on July 1st. So what the motion that is before you has been prepared by Donna McNichol, and I've shared that with all of the town administrators and understand that Ashfield has already voted and Buckland has it on their agenda tomorrow night. If this is approved by all three select boards, then on Wednesday, we have a letter of intent that's been prepared, again, by Donna McNichol for us to contract with Vadar for Incorporated for software to be able to get all of our financial and attendance and all of those systems in place, so that then accounting services and treasurer services can then get all uploaded and ready to roll on July 1st. So that's what this motion is all about.
Perfect. We have the motion written out for us by the town council. Would one of you like to put it into play, and then we can have any further discussion?
Sure, I'll move to accept section 3 of whatever C.402 of the Acts of 2022, which authorizes the Board of Managers of the West County Senior Services District to act during the transition from the Senior Center Consortium between the towns of Ashfield, Buckland, and Shelburne to the West County Senior Services District. I guess it's chapter 402.
Yeah, chapter, yes. C is the chapter.
I second that.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll put the matter to a vote. Tricia?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
I am aye. Motion passes 3-0-0. Go get them.
Okay,
Sylvia.
we're on a roll. We're going to be looking at proposals for accounting services on Wednesday. So we're, one step at a time, one check at a time, and we're continuing to move along. So thank you.
Got it.
Thank you for your support. We really appreciate it.
You're doing
Have a
great.
good evening.
Thank you, Sylvia. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Item D, new business. Community Preservation Committee has a request. They had at their last meeting voted to request our approval of the hiring of Susan Durkee as the CPC clerk. She's known to us from her service on the planning board. And
I move to accept her appointment. I read her application. It looks good to me. Her letter of interest, or whatever you want to call it.
I will second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, put the matter to a vote. Tricia?
Aye.
And Andrew?
Aye.
I am aye. The motion passes 3-0-0. John Taylor, Fire Chief, proposed town bylaw for address assignment. I know when I built my house, it was the fire chief that came and pointed to the spot on the road and said, okay, here's your opening, and this is your new address number for this property. It has been their responsibility going back at least 20 years. So the request that's before us, I expected him to be here tonight to discuss. So these are proposed articles for the town meeting bylaw changes. Any discussion? Have you read them? Do we need to take an action
I
on?
have. I was kind of hoping that John would be here to kind of walk us through his thinking, because he's presented us with a pretty detailed plan. I'm generally trust John to make good decisions about these and many other things, but I don't have anything to compare it to, so it's like, you read it and it says, okay, sounds good to me, John, but but I think it would be helpful for him to give us some backdrop on it and stuff. I don't know, Terry, do you have thoughts on this?
I know I couldn't give him an appointment. I couldn't give him an official appointment because our evening was relatively packed. He also hadn't connected with Karen in the assessor's office to see if she would be on board with the procedure that he's laid out. He has since talked with her and said that they are in agreement. I can try to get him in here within the next couple of weeks. I also need to figure out whether or not we would need a public hearing before we bring this bylaw forth. It seems a little late in the game, but possibly we could pull this off.
Because it strikes me that it's, pretty inside baseball in terms of, the technicalities that need to happen to meet emergency management requirements. But so do you have does this raise any issues or flags to you, or does it just look pretty procedural?
I think he's formalizing what is already taking place, but I guess I would want to hear that from him.
Okay. So that would be my thought would be to just have John come in and walk us through it.
That's my instinct as well. And pushing it out 2 weeks will still make it possible for him.
Yep.
Let's-
It's pretty clear, but I think it would be good just to have them give us a broad overview of it.
Let's do that. Try and
Okay.
squeeze in a 15-minute block in our next meeting. I mean, it's only almost 8 now. I mean, we're used to long meetings. But boy, we're gaining on it. So we're good on that one. We'll try and get him in at our next meeting. Perfect.
Sounds good.
Any other business? Next regularly scheduled meeting will be March 24th.
Rick?
Yes.
I just wanted everybody to know that I will not be running again for this seat on the select board. Thank you very much for the opportunity, all the people of Shelburne who voted for me. And I hope one of you will decide to come in and fill my seat. Thank you very much.
Thank you for running and filling that unexpired term, and been great. And we're going to keep you working for the next few months.
I know.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other business? Hearing none.
I just had a few notes in the next item about correspondence.
There, go for it.
Oh, simply to say, well, I don't have any comment on that letter so if do you have a comment on that letter, Rick, in terms of Governor Healy's letter? Only to say, as part of my circling back to my liaison report, that I did talk with Rick, to Jeff about funding and projects for the coming year. And we do have pretty significant increase in Chapter 90. Chapter 90 is about doubled. It's $370,000 or so. We have money coming in from the Fair Share Amendment, which was the millionaire's tax that got passed, and that money is going to roads and education. So that's another $112,000. And I think there's $40,000 or so left over. So all of which is to say that Rick has identified a number of road projects, which we can talk more about next meeting. And that funding can also be very helpful in softening the capital blow of some of these large equipment items. The replacing the 2001 dump truck in particular is a pretty big ticket item. So that will be very helpful for that. And then finally, Rick did share.
You mean Jeff?
Yeah.
I keep saying Rick. I don't know where Rick is coming from.
You're staring at my face.
I'm appointing you as the highway superintendent. Jeff has forwarded to me and Terry a snow policy. He and I talked about that in terms of something that he had done when he was a super up in Heath. And so I think that's something that Terry can forward that to you, and the two of you can also take a look at that for next meeting. But I think those kinds of things are helpful in terms of getting ahead of any sort of grumbling or confusion or whatever that might take place among residents about how the streets are getting plowed in the wintertime. But that is something that he's kind of getting out in front of now. So another good initiative on Jeff's part.
And just to clarify for people who may watch this later and don't have that letter in front of them, the doubling that you had mentioned earlier is pending approval of the budget she submitted. So it's a request. Right. It's a request at this point, not a fact. And it sounded like a fact the way you said it. So
okay, yeah.
We want to have people thinking we have it already in the
right,
bed.
right. No, they're not all the way through the budget process at the state level.
Super. Any public comment? I think we have only one person on. Hearing none, looks like we can call it a night. If we have a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn the meeting at 7:55.
And I will second.
And I will call the matter to a vote. Tricia?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
And I am aye. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night.